Good evening, everybody. How are you? So, if everyone could take their seats, we're going to start in a few minutes. So, thank you all for joining us here tonight. This is very exciting for me, and it's very exciting for us as Native Sons to be here. And as the saying goes, if you build it, they will come. And I feel like that's perfect because we're here at Google. And I also am really grateful to Torrence Boone and Victor Scotty for helping to make this happen. They met with me, they heard my vision for Native Son, and they said, let's do something. So I'm grateful that we're here because technology is the future. Technology is how we now live, breathe, communicate. And it's super important that we tell our stories that way, that we see ourselves that way, and that we use that and that we work in this space. So, Native Son is an organization about inspiration and empowerment for Black gay men. I started it a year ago. We've done several conversations like this. We did one around Stay Woke. We've done Black gay male identity, Black gay images in the media, and we've also done the Native Son Awards, which a lot of you have attended. So I just want to real quickly before we start show you a video to show you just a little bit more of the Native Son flavor. Native Son is a platform that I created to inspire and empower Black gay men. A big impetus for this movement is so that as Black gay men we can see each other. I think it's really important that we come together, we celebrate each other, and we also talk about the issues that are relevant to our community and also think about what are the long-term goals? How do we build mentorship? How do we build networking? And how do we sustain and protect ourselves, especially in challenging times like this? So that's Native Son, and thank you. Thank you. So, a big part of what was going to happen tonight is that we're going to talk about Black gay men in technology and their narrative so that it can inspire other people and so that it can inspire all of us. So, without further ado, I want to invite our host up to moderate the panel, Mr. Torrence Boone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you
Emil.
so much.
So, good evening, everyone. My name's Torrence Boone. I'm a VP in the Global Business Organization here at Google. And on behalf of Google, I just want to welcome you all this evening. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. Hopefully you had a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. I know it's a really, really crazy time, but this is, I think, a pretty historic gathering because I'm not aware of another forum where we brought together such an incredible panel to discuss such an interesting and forward-looking issue, and that is Black gay male identity and how that connects and influences technology. And at Google, diversity and inclusion is so critical for everything that we do. We also are incredibly committed to innovation and really pushing the envelope of the types of dialogue that, again, bring people together, that drive that diversity and inclusion agenda. So I want to invite our panelists up to take a seat. I will introduce them as they come up. So if we start with Marcus. You want to come on up, Marcus? So Marcus Mabry is the director of mobile and offline platforms at CNN. He oversees all mobile and off-platform efforts across emerging platforms and products and all CNN digital properties, including CNN.com, CNN CNN Politics, and CNN Money. Marcus joined CNN from Twitter, where he ran the Moments product for US and Canadian audiences. And prior to his time at Twitter, he launched the New York Times Watching section, which highlighted noteworthy stories from around the internet. He's an author of 2 books, one on Condoleezza Rice and another on Black America, and he's a graduate of Stanford. Please join me in welcoming Marcus. Next up, we have Antonius Porch, who serves as the general counsel of Shazam. I know everyone has used their product.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of the product. And prior to joining Shazam, Antonius spent over a decade at the global entertainment company Viacom. For most of his tenure, he worked at Nickelodeon, serving as its vice president and deputy general counsel. And while at Viacom, he served as the executive champion of Emerge, which was the LGBT employee resource group at the company, which was dedicated to creating a welcoming environment for all Viacom employees. And prior to Viacom, he served as the director of business and legal affairs at Classic Media, now DreamWorks Classics, and an animation studio, production and brand licensing company. He is overly educated. He graduated from Yale, Columbia Law School, and the Executive Management Program at Harvard Business School. So welcome, Antonius. Next up, we have Warren Satchell. Warren is the men's fashion editor at Amazon Fashion. So he's had a really busy weekend with Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And prior to Amazon, he worked in buying, merchandising, and product management across diverse labels and brands, including Armani Exchange, Gap Europe, Indigo Books and Music, which is a lifestyle brand in Toronto, Kenneth Cole, and Original Penguin. Warren serves as the New York Fashion Advisory Board. He serves on the New York Fashion Advisory Board for VCU, where he graduated with a degree in fashion merchandising. He also serves on the board of the Art Institute of New York. So welcome, Warren. And last but not least, we have James Felton Keith, who is an award-winning engineer and economist and chair of the International Data Trade Association. He is building a global ecosystem focused on cyber insurance technology and predictive analytics. James also co-founded Slay TV network, an ad tech firm, and he specializes in the ethnography of technology and economic inclusion. He is the former CEO of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce and a mayoral technology appointee in Detroit during the city's landmark bankruptcy process. And he serves on the boards of OSTEM, NYC Equality Coalition, and the Democratic National Committee. So join me in welcoming James. So we thought we'd actually start with a bit of an icebreaker, just so that you get to know the panel in more personal terms. And given the subject of our evening and this amazing audience of Black gay men and allies, we wanted to start by asking each of them to name a famous or important Black gay male hero and why. So I'll actually start just to get them off the hook a little bit, give them some time to think about it. I would name Alvin Ailey. In a previous life, was a professional dancer, and the first professional dance concert that I ever went to was a performance by Alvin Ailey, and he's a favorite choreographer of mine, so that would be my choice. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. For me, it's pretty easy. RuPaul. And that is partially because if you Google, since we are here, if you Google RuPaul and Marcus Mabry, you'll see an interview I did with RuPaul when I was at the New York Times a few years ago. And it's RuPaul. I mean, you all probably know, right? Why? Because RuPaul is brilliant, shockingly brilliant, and has lived through so much, has been on the margins and on the fringes, and has been at the center of our culture too, and has lived it all. And in kind of a display of the wisdom of RuPaul, I interviewed him at a very heady moment out in LA after the Supreme Court had actually legalized same-sex marriage rights. And, this was a moment of great triumph. And so I asked him, I said, well, what's next, do you think, for LGBTQ rights, given that we've gotten this far? And rather than being triumphalist, RuPaul said, well, there have been moments like this before of great openness, and they've been followed by moments of great closure. And so we had, the last one I remember he said was before 9/11, there was all this amazing progress happening. 9/11 happened and the country changed overnight. Things shut down. What was allowed, what America felt comfortable with, shut down. America was afraid, and things got very dark, very fast. And RuPaul said, right now this is a moment of great openness. I expect it won't last. I expect there'll be another moment of darkness. And to have that wisdom at that moment, I thought was so important. And something that, my partner and I, we have two 7-year-old boys who'll be 8 next week. And I take that wisdom from RuPaul with me every day as a journalist, as I look at the world and the possibilities and the world my children will inherit. So I'm very aware of that. It may look good today. That's not forever.
Well, yeah, and I've met Ru, and I totally see that and found him to be phenomenal and insightful. So my personal hero in this context, not perhaps famous, is George Cheeks, who's the president of Late Night at NBC. He's a lawyer by training. He used to be the general counsel at MTV Networks, which is where I worked. And he is Black, openly gay, and successful, and has really lived authentically and inspirationally. And I know that for all the people who worked with him on the business side, under him, alongside him, he was inspirational. And so, in my sense, that's sort of a tangible hero, and that's someone I would like to emulate as I kind of move forward. And I think really is what this night is about, this conversation.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out backstage like who we would pick, but I guess when I think about over time, I'm not. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a hero, but I'm a big fan of Little Richard's music, but also music in general. Shout out to Shazam. We were talking about ways to use it faster. I didn't find out, Andy, actually our Samsung TV integrates with Shazam, and we can just automatically download all the songs. But specific to Little Richard, I think my husband's right.
We'll be taking
there.
product advice throughout
we're gonna
the evening.
Dig right in there. But I think Little Richard comes to mind because I think all of my work as an engineer, as an economist, as an ethnographer, for people who aren't familiar with the term, it's an anthropological term for the study of culture. I just always felt this sort of undervaluement, if that's a word, from my colleagues, from my peers, from the broader culture. And I think Little Richard's career embodies that. I mean, he created so much in the genre and kind of oozed so much of his culture over American society and American culture, and was just not indemnified for it. And I think that my work to date with every company I've started, whether it's been in fintech or insurtech or ad tech, and even the trade associations and the chambers of commerce, has been an effort to kind of corral the value that I see in the world from minority figures of sorts and better distribute it to them. I'm an engineer by trade, and I just see all problems as a distribution problem. So I'm constantly trying to figure out, how do I better distribute my value to me and, help others on that journey. And so Little Richard just comes to mind in general. Yeah.
Warren?
Well, I definitely can say that Marcus and I fought in the green room over RuPaul. But I think, just to an earlier sentiment, if I think about, specifically in this context, I think for me, it probably would be Andre Leon Talley. I say that to say it's a 6'6" Black man who, by most standards, is not necessarily reflective of the fashion industry today. And I think that, one of the things that I get from him is that he is unapologetically Andre. And I think that, that's major, especially in the time and space that we're in today. and I definitely feel like, there are days where, I'm kind of the Andre Leon of Amazon, being the only black man in most respects. So yeah.
Great. So let's start with the story behind the story. I shared your bios. We know all of the challenges of diversity in the tech industry. How did you find your way there? And was it intentional, accidental? Again, what's the backstory of how you ended up where you are?
Mine is completely accidental. I was a journalist for 20 years, mostly as a foreign correspondent and a foreign editor, based in places like Johannesburg and covering war zones and stuff. From Bosnia to Angola to Congo to Zaire, and I was at Newsweek for a long time. Then I came to the New York Times, and it was really tech was taking over the space of journalism, the journalism space. It was tech was always very important to us. It's been the backbone of what we did. 50 years ago, when they used to have foreign correspondents who were everywhere around the world, but they couldn't pick up a phone anywhere and call anybody. They had telegraphs that would, they telegraphed their stories back to New York, and somebody in New York would put that in something that could actually be printed and send it out. So tech has always been integral to what we do. But tech, in my time in journalism, has taken over the whole space. And so tech is not just integral to what we do; it's everything that we do. So us reporting and not getting the tech to get it out to distribute our stories means we didn't report anything. It meant nothing ever happened. And it's more important now than ever before. For me, it was completely incidental. It was out of desperation. Like I wanted us to survive. As businesses, I wanted us to survive. And I realized that if we did not get the tech right, then we didn't survive. And I realized that the cost of our not surviving as free press, as journalists, is the end of democracy. And so for me, it was that desperation of how do I help us to survive? Because I love making the journalism. There's nothing more fun than interviewing people and being out there and telling the world to the world. That's amazing. It's such a rush to do it. But again, I don't care how fun it is if you don't have somebody back figuring out what's the UX, how does the tech work, how do we distribute this content to people who want it and who are even willing to pay for it, journalism dies. And so it was really that kind of frustration that led me to do tech at the Times first, to do our mobile stuff, our digital mobile stuff. And then it was frustration that the Times not moving it fast enough, although the Times knew where we had to go, that led me to Google. Led me to Twitter, because Twitter had a brand new news product.
You can come to Google.
So Twitter here in New York is just across the street. And it was, I wanted to go to a place where, the thing about journalism is you have these brilliant people who are really good at getting information from people, and they rise to the top of the organization because they're really good journalists, and they become, in charge of the journalism, in charge of the whole enterprise. Well, you know what? Those abilities are not necessarily the good ones to run anything, especially a tech thing, which is what we all are increasingly. I went to Twitter because I wanted to go somewhere, and this is amazing for journalists to say, where journalists were not in charge. I want to go somewhere where the engineers were in charge. People who understood product were in charge, not people who knew how to get a story. Because who cares how to get a story? You need how to get a story out. And so that's why I went to Twitter and came back to CNN as a news place with my tech chops. Because again, I see my job as a product job.
Yep. Great.
So I didn't realize this was a job interview, and we're all getting offers out of this. But okay, so I'll revise my talking points. So I think, not unlike you, I arrived at tech most